to Jason Unleashed. Happy Thursday. Jason Carter here, you guys. Good to see you. Hope everyone's doing well. Excited for today's show because it's a celebratory show. It's a happy birthday to my guest today. He's a producer, he's a musician, he's a host himself. He hustles like a mother, and he's an all-around really cool guy. Xavier Brinkman is on the show today. MTV Australia correspondent, executive producer and host at Heardwell, and just an all-around kick-ass dude. He's awesome. Let's bring him in.
X. X is, I would say his full name, but it's easier to say X. 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 See, I'm doing the connection dance. The connection dance. Xavier!
Hey, yo, how are you, man?
Hey, guy. Happy birthday, buddy.
Thanks, bro. I feel like you've been just the biggest hype man for the last 24 hours, you know? I love it.
That's what I do. That's what I do. Good to have you on the show. How does it feel to be 25? 25 is a great age, man.
25 is great. I've been 25 for about 7 years now. I really enjoy it, man.
Hey, you know what? Like Mariah Carey, you just discount numbers. You're going to be eternally 25, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Glad to have you. Yeah, I mean, sure. Black don't crack, X. Black don't crack. So we'll go with that. We'll go with that. Good to see you, man. Quarantine's been kicking everyone's ass. How are you hanging in there?
I'm good, man. It's I think COVID thankfully happened right at a time where technology was able to keep people like you and I in business, you know?
Totally, yes.
Yeah, so I'm full-time with a company called Heardwell, and we have a partnership with Fox, right? So I shoot at our studio at the Fox lot, and it was like every Tuesday. And so yeah, like it obviously, if you remember, like in March, it all sort of happened really quickly. It was like,
right.
Like I remember it was like, oh yeah, Coachella might be getting cancelled, and I was like, that's a bit of an overreaction, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, like I got brought into my office, and they're like, hey man, like we like you're, because I am the executive producer, so I run the department, and it's like we don't know, like Fox is closing down. We don't know if we can keep this going. We're not sure what we can do, and obviously, like I'm on a, like, you know, if you can't tell by my accent, obviously I'm on a visa over here, so that has like serious implications for someone,
right?
Like me, you know, so
absolutely.
It was a scary month. Like March was really scary, but luckily we were able to you know, pivot and we just thought we'd try it. And so I literally do these kind of interviews every week as well. I just got off one like 2 minutes ago. And they've actually been pretty good, you know. It's like one good thing to come out of it is that I used to have such a tough time, even though like Los Angeles is the epicenter of entertainment. I still have such a tough time getting talent into the Fox slot, right? Like finding a day. Everyone's busy finding a day to get people to come in. And this has actually made it way easier because I'm like, hey, can you hold your phone up to your face for 10 minutes, like on Thursday? And people are like, yeah, I can do that, you know?
Right. First of all, I would agree 100%. Isn't it fascinating how open people are to doing this now? As back in January, they're like, no, I'm not doing that. And now they're like, sure. What time? Where do you want me to be? It's incredible. It's incredible. Let's say what's up to people in the comments. Rebecca Taylor, hi. Maud Garrett says hi. So many people are here. Again, happiest of birthdays. And dude, you are one hardworking brother, man. Since I've met you, and I've known you for a while now, you have just stayed consistent and are always doing awesome, great things. You're a musician, you're an executive producer, you're a host, you critique films, you talk about music, television, you're a reality TV star now. But this all started from you saying, you know what, I'm going to leave Melbourne and go to a completely different continent and try my luck out in Los Angeles. When did you decide to have that crazy idea, and what was the catalyst for you to make that decision?
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So actually, Rebecca Taylor, who I think is watching, she actually had a big part in it, which is interesting. So basically, like I was 20, so I turned 32 today. Oh wait, 25. I turned 32 today.
25.
And I moved to the US when I was 22, right? And it was actually unintentional. So I was right into traveling at the time. Like I was doing these huge trips, and me and a couple of buddies were like, hey, like we want to try and drive a car from LA to New York and then New York to Argentina, and which is wild. And so I had a couple of weeks that I was going to be in Los Angeles, and at the time, so I just graduated in a degree in journalism and PR, and I was right into the record label thing, and I was interning at all these record labels like Shock Records in Melbourne, and I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. And my dad actually was like, hey man, like if you go in LA, why don't you try and get a bit of work experience at a record label? And I was thinking, I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. But anyway, I was at a label at the time in Melbourne, and their sister label or brother label, whatever, is a punk label called Epitaph in Silver Lake. And I ended up harassing them for a few months, and they said, "Hey man, like we'd love to have you, seeing as you keep calling us every morning, but we don't take. It's what you got to do. But we don't take people for 2 weeks. Like it's either 3 months or nothing." And I was like, "Oh, all right, like okay." And so I came over a couple of months earlier. I was able to get a room in a house right in Silver Lake. I didn't know what Silver Lake was. I'm like, that's just where the label is. If it was in Compton or wherever, I would have gone there. But it just happened in a great suburb like Silver Lake. And the girl, it was an Australian girl who I moved in with, who was Rebecca Taylor. And basically what happened, I stayed there for the 3 months. I had a great time. I met tons of people. And then I headed off on that trip down to South America. So we actually did what we intended to do crazily. So we spent 6 months and we drove to New York, and then we drove all the way like down through Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, and then over the Darien Gap all the way down to Argentina. And it took us 6 months, and that's a whole other interview. Hi, Beck. And then I got an email from Beck, Rebecca Taylor, she's The Rock's publicist and Tom Cruise's publicist. She's a legend.
She's a big deal. She's a big deal. Yeah.
Kind of a big deal. And she emailed me and she said, "Hey man, the guy that moved in after you is a psycho. He was like a really airy-fairy artist and was just ripping bongs all day and left the burner on and was, being just a weirdo." And she said, "Hey, if you want to move back in," I told the guy it was only going to be 6 months anyway. And I had no intention of it. I had to go back to LA anyway to pick up a guitar and a few things. And I thought, all right, like I've got about a month left that I could stay on this visa. So if I can get back to LA and get a job, I'll stay. And if not, I'll just carry on back to Melbourne. And so I did that. And then I ended up getting my first job in a record label agency after 3 weeks, and then got the visa. And hey, there's Mordo. And then basically, and then that was it. And then before I knew it, I started a band that I'm still in. I got my first hosting gig for a company called Balcony TV. And I had a girlfriend for a few years, and the next thing I know, I was sort of just like very rooted in Los Angeles, and it went like that.
That's how it normally happens. Look, we're going to talk about your hosting career, but let's talk about music, because you just mentioned your band, The Elevate, right? And first, congratulations on Extra Motivation. Just came out in April. Great song.
Thank you.
2, you guys have some really good videos. Very well shot. I'm one of those visual guys. I'm like, Xavier cannot look better than he looks in these videos. And the music is great. This band is a labor of love. And has music always been at your core? I feel like you've always been musically inclined. You play guitar, you play piano, you're an amazing vocalist. When did music become like your superpower?
Yeah, thank you. Jeez, you're very flattering. Yeah, man. So I'd always played in bands. Like, I started playing guitar really young, and then I started playing drums in a band in high school. And then I was always a guitarist. I'd always wanted to sing, but I was too shy. And then I moved to Europe when I was 18 for a year, and I was traveling around, and I ended up getting my hands on a guitar. And I remember my first time singing was in a city called Dubrovnik in Croatia. And
I've been there.
Yeah, so I was in this castle like bridge where they filmed Game of Thrones actually. And I was with a whole group of guys, and I just sort of ran off. I was like, hey, I'm just gonna head off for the day. And I put out a hat, and I knew how to play like 5 songs. I could sing as well. And I'm like, no one on earth is gonna know me here, so I'm just gonna sing. I'm gonna go for it. And then I got up. I played my 5 songs twice. And then I broke a string. I made 14 krona, which is about $3.50. And I went and bought a hamburger, and I was like, fuck yeah, like I can do this. Like,
yeah.
And then I got back a year later to Melbourne, and I started playing in pubs, and that was my job in college. So for about 3 years, I started playing like covers in bars and cafes and all that sort of thing. And then by the time I got to LA, I was kind of hoping to do the same thing, but it turns out Los Angeles is just full of really talented musicians, and no one pays you to play here, because there's so many people. And I was like, damn, like what am I going to do now? And I basically, I had all these originals that I'd written, but I just never really got a chance to perform them because I was playing covers. And and then luckily, I ended up moving into a house in Echo Park for the first few weeks before I moved in with Beck. And that's where I met my whole original band. We're just hanging out there. Like at the time, it was like a big party house, and we would all I was interning at Epitaph at the time, and we'd all just start jamming. And then I was very like shy. Like when you live in Los Angeles, you learn you've got, if you create something, you've got to be your biggest fan. You got to show
right.
But when I was young, I was 22 at the time, and I was very shy, and I ended up getting really drunk one night, and I was like, fuck it. And I played all these songs for my now guitarist and bass player. And they were like, dude, they're like really good tracks. Like, dude, we should start a band. And I was like, yeah, all right. And then we did. And it's only really now that I realize how like unique that is. Like, because finding band members in Los Angeles is really tough, but I just got lucky and happened to just like be living in a house full of them. So that's how it started.
I love those stories because it's, what those stories lean on, X, is the fact that you are like, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like your purpose is you're living your purpose. And I don't want to get all Oprah Super Soul Sunday with you, but it's true. Like I myself lived in a house with 5 people at this townhouse in Van Nuys. We're all dancers, but it was like the best time of my life. And you have just these creative people around, and it just fosters more creativity and such great memories. But your inspirations in music, because you sing pop, you're indie pop, you're indie rock. Who's influenced you the most musically in your life? Where do you draw your inspirations from?
Yeah, good question. It's funny, like it wasn't actually until we recorded all these songs that people were like, wow, man, you guys, like, you must like love Weezer, yeah, and like Queens of the Stone Age, and like 90s bands like Everclear and all that. And I was like, yeah, like I love those bands, but I had no idea. I wasn't really conscious that they were influencing sort of the music that I was writing, because it was, super grungy. I remember we had a write-up from like, what was it, like the LA Times or something, calling us, saying that we were this is when we first started. We were way grungier back then, but they said that we were the editor tweeted saying she was watching a Weezer cover band that didn't know they were a Weezer cover band.
That's a compliment, though.
I know, but I was really offended by it at the time. But yeah, so I'd say like those like grungy rock bands, and I grew up listening. My first entrance into music was basically like Queen and Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones. Like you just listen to what your parents listen to, and luckily my dad had a pretty good taste in music.
So you have this band. You guys are what, 10 years strong, over 10 years strong now, right? And
I guess so. Yeah. We're about, I hate putting a number on it, but yeah, I've been here for nine and a bit years, and yeah, probably around that, which is alarming, but yeah.
Putting out music, though, it's hard. You hear major artists like Christina Aguilera, I don't know, Janet Jackson, who talk about the work that goes into that, to giving of that creative well, right? To writing and the time it takes, and to find music and to have it really be something you're passionate about. Because like any musician or anyone who writes, I'm sure there's songs that you've written that will never see the light of day, right? That you're just like, I'm not feeling that. Mariah Carey's releasing this album called The Rarities, and these are songs that never were released that she wrote. And I can just imagine for yourself, there's songs that you didn't put out, but to have be in a band for almost a decade and to write songs, what are the ups, what are the highs and the lows you've experienced? Like, can you tell us about times where you're like, oh, it was so good, and times where like, damn, this is kicking my ass. Like, what am I going to do? Because everyone has those stories in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah. It's a daily occurrence out here. Yeah, I guess like the hardest thing for me, so I love, I probably would be a full-time musician if I could, but basically my situation was that, so I'm on a visa, which meant I had to have a full-time job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for the first couple of years, I was working in a record label, and I was like, there was nothing glamorous about it. Like, I was working for like Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus and Robin Thicke and like Carly Rae Jepsen when the Call Me Maybe days, so like 2013. And I was like, wow, like this, I felt like I'd been there for a year or two. I'm like, cool, I've experienced it. It's really just hard work, and I can sit at a desk when I'm 50, but like I'm not young and able to sort of experiment for very long, So I was like, look, I've experienced the record label stuff, but if I want, and I was also hosting a show, and I was basically like, if I have to have a full-time job, which I did, right? For me to be on, I can't go and work at a bar and take a break. I have to have a full-time job, and that is stressful sometimes. So basically the hard part. So my goal was to become a full-time host, which I am. I mean, to become a full-time host, you've got to wear a fair few hats. You've got to be, I'm a producer and host. It's probably 95% being a producer.
Producer, right?
Hosting, as you know.
Yeah.
So and obviously like being in the band is amazing, but it's like, I guess the tough parts for me is like we all have side jobs and side gigs that we have to do before we can go full time on what we want to do. And I guess the hardest thing for me was that I was getting so bogged down with work and like reports and all that in production that I was like, wow, like I haven't even thought about the band in like a month or whatever, you know. And I think all the band members, I mean, everyone's, you know, at the end of the day, everyone's got to pay their rent and pay the bills, and all of a sudden, like the side hustle can sort of take over your life, you know, and
right.
all of a sudden you forget why you even moved to Los Angeles in the
that part. Yes.
Yeah.
Xavier, I worked for AT&T for 13 years while I was pursuing becoming a host until I got my first full-time hosting gig. So I get it, man. And, you know, it's those days where you're just like, you're doing that 9 to 5 and you're thinking like it's never going to happen for you, because that 9 to 5 soaks the life out of you, right? And then also existing in Los Angeles soaks the life out of you. Trying to exist in an industry that's not forgiving, that's not giving, that's not the most nurturing. It's tough, man. You have to be a certain type of human to even embark on that kind of career. But getting into your hosting, killing it. You Entertainment Weekly. You've been a host for MTV Australia, the Tens Down Under, Collider. You name it. You've lent your talents to some pretty cool outlets. Your hustle. Who instilled that in you?
Good call. Again, it's really hard to take this. I mean, I appreciate it, but coming from you, Jason, you're like someone who I've really looked up to for years, you know.
Real, thank you. Oh, wow, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Ever since we hosted a couple of episodes of Pop Trigger together and listening to you talk about politics, which is not my strong suit. So the way you just do everything you do, I'm always just like, oh God. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, man, I don't really know. I guess like you know, it's funny, like my sister lives in my hometown. She has 3 kids. Married. We're completely sort of opposite, and yeah, I don't really know. I think it was I did a lot of traveling when I was between 18 and 22. I'd been to 51 countries, and I was kind of always just like an overachieving little shithead, really. Whereas I got into that mode where when people would be like, nah, man, you can't go and do that, or you can't go and be a musician in that country, and I really started to like rise to the challenge, and then when I got to Los Angeles, and like I spent, you know, most days crying in the shower for the next year, fully clothed. I was just sort of like, damn, like, you know, if I'm gonna survive out here, like I gotta step it up, you know.
Right.
And I remember actually, I remember hearing someone saying when I first moved, they're saying 8 years is an overnight success.
I heard 15. I heard it was 15. I'm glad you got 8.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, like they okay, yeah, that's true. And I was like, 8 years, like as if, like it won't take me long. It's like, bro, I just clicked over 9. Like, and yes, we have achieved a lot. Like both of us have achieved a lot in the hosting world, but of course, we aren't happy with it. Of course,
right.
Like, you know, my parents are always sort of saying, hey man, like, are you done over there? Are you gonna come back? Like, you got nieces and nephews, and I'm like, yo, I didn't come this far to only get this far, you know, but they're like, you've achieved a lot. And I'm like, no, I haven't. Like, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And, you know, that's just like how you and I are probably made up, and how just a lot of people are in Los Angeles. You know, you've kind of got to have that like burning desire to even last this long. Cause I mean, a lot of people, they don't, you know, they last 6 months and they're out of there. It's not for everyone, you know, it's a really tough industry to be in, and you got to have thick skin, you know?
Yeah, 100%. It's, you know, it's not for everyone. It's definitely an acquired taste that takes 15 years to acquire. But, you know, it's also about striking a balance. When did you finally start striking that balance between hyper ambition and saying, you know, like, as you said, I didn't come this far to just come this far, but also saying, hey, I've also need to have a life and be 32 and live my life and smell the roses. Because you're very positive on your social media. Like some days I'm like, why Xavier Brinkman is so effing positive. I just want to throw my phone out the window. But I'm joking. But you're definitely positive. Striking that balance, X. Like when did you strike that balance? And was it one definitive moment where you thought enough is enough, or did it just happen over time?
Yeah, good question. I mean, as I said, maybe I need to hook up a GoPro in my shower and I can show the fully clothed alcoholic crying scenes. But that is so, I mean, first of all, so true about social media, right? It's like we're really only showing the highlight reel. But yeah, you know, I think, so my girlfriend and I moved in together last year, and that's like, she's Canadian. She works in, she's a healthcare professional, so she's an epidemiologist. and she's in policy and public health. And so she has no idea she doesn't know who I interview. I'm like, hey, I'm going to interview Kevin Hart. She's like, who? I'm like, oh, God bless you. So that's been good. And like before we were living together, I would definitely just be, you lose track. You just be working to 1 a.m. and I'd be filling in so much time with, and it wasn't necessarily effective work. It was just like drawn out long work. And I think when we moved in together, she really started being like, hey man, like we're having dinner and then you're done. Like, no more working type of thing. And it wasn't until then that I realized like that actually, it's not actually a bad thing. I'm just like, hey, like it actually started making me be more effective in the times that I was working instead of being like procrastinating and being pretty ineffective over say like a 12-hour span in a day, as opposed to doing 8 hours, but just like applying yourself a little bit more. So I hope that answered your question. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out, but I guess I have gotten better because I've kind of been forced to,
Right, 100%. And it did answer my question because I think that now, especially with COVID and how we've had the time to really sit back and marinate on our lives, essentially, it's finding out what we don't want to go back to, what we're leaving behind. Also, Scott, look, Scott Tweedy from E! News just said, yeah, Xavier.
Yes, that guy.
Hey, look, tell Scott to come on my show too. I'll be an honorary Aussie. I'm with it. I'm here for it.
You'd be lucky to get Tweedy on. So yeah, that dude's just crushing it in Sydney, and the next thing you know, he's in New York and killing it.
I know. On Daily Pop every day. But you guys are both very impressive. You're this kick-ass journalist. You give some of the best interviews I've watched. I think I'm a pretty good interviewer, and I enjoy watching all your interviews. Your music is dope. Now you're a reality TV star, which I'm not surprised by that because you're insanely good looking. I remember when you walked into the Young Turks, and I was like, first of all, that's Xavier Brinkman. 2, how is his hair that on point? And 3, how is he so good looking it's criminal? So for you to be on reality TV now is a natural progression. Dream Life, FYI, tell us about that. And are you having the time of your life watching yourself in that vein? Because this is not your first time at the rodeo for reality television.
Yeah. Thank you. Tweet has written, hey Jason, Xavier ticks all the boxes and tears it up in the set. We have but Tweety, I'm gonna take that as a yes. He's gonna be on your show. So Jason will DM you, and more Jason as well. Damn. What was the question again?
About you being a reality TV juggernaut now.
Yeah. So yeah, man. I don't know what you're like. I hate watching myself. I actually don't really ever watch any of my interviews, especially on TV. Like the sound of your voice, like what you think your voice sounds like and all that. So I've been on reality TV before. I've actually never watched it though. But this one I have. So it was just a friend named Serena. She's like an absolute like hustler. She's in Melbourne and she was starting a series out here. And she kind of asked me about it. And she said, hey, did you want to just, could you come on to be in a couple of episodes? So basically it's about her, the behind the scenes of her coming over to start this interview series really, and this business called the Love Academy. And basically because I'm interviewing different influencers every week, and that's sort of what people are seeing me do. Because I have this series that I host is on digital entrepreneurship. So I'm interviewing like people like James Charles and all that on like, how a 20-year-old is bringing in $5 million a year and how
insane
how they learn sort of the business behind things, because it's like you could be a kid in like Ohio, and then the next minute they're in LA and they've got managers and agents and all that. So the series talks about that. So basically I got brought on to sort of just be myself, but consult about sort of the influencer marketing really. And then I was only really supposed to be in like, a scene or two. And then I just sort of I don't know, like just one thing led to another. And then I just sort of became one of the main cast members. So yeah, it's cool.
That is cool. and the way you so nonchalantly are just like, one thing led to another. Now I'm one of the main cast members. It's great. 2020, killing the game, winning.
How lucky, because we filmed that in September last year, so a while ago. And how lucky is that? They got everything shot and done before COVID hit. And now like everyone's like networks are like starving for content, So
right, they are.
Like, great, we have a gift.
Here you go. You're welcome. Well, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. Music.
I was going to say, like, it's always a little nerve-wracking. I don't know if you've done reality TV, Jason, but, like, it's obviously, like, a little nerve-wracking because, like, you go on there. I don't remember doing anything too ridiculous, but it's just like, how am I going to be edited? You know, like, is this going to come back and bite me in the butt? So
right. Well,
like, honestly, I lost sleep over this series. I was like, oh my God, like,
well, yeah.
A lot of it was changing. They kind of made, you know, like a lot of the stuff was like, hey, like we're changing it. So now you're going to be having an argument with this person and you're going to be walking out on them in a bar. And I'm like, I would never walk out on anyone in a bar, but like, fuck it, let's do it. You know?
Right. Well, because it's not, we don't call it reality TV anymore. I was talking to Omarosa last week, and, you know, she's a reality TV gold. And she's like, it's unscripted television because it's not really real. If a producer's telling you, Xavier, you're going to walk out after they say this, and that's not real. That's like, you know, that's not real. However, you having the balls like, okay, you know, I'm just going to do it. That's real. So, and also I am on a reality show. I'm on RuPaul's Drag Race. So I completely get how reality TV works. But at the same time though, I don't have speaking lines. I'm just eye candy. I don't get to like walk out on anyone in a bar, but I think that's pretty cool. We want more music from you. We know the Elevate, you guys are this unique, you have this unique sound. You've had songs featured on some pretty cool shows like Shameless. You played the Troubadour. When are we going to get some more from the band, and what does that more sound like?
Yeah, good question. So I'd like written a bunch of songs, and we were so basically the way it works with the band is like I'll kind of come up with you know, I'll write sort of the verse and the chorus and like the chords. I might not have lyrics yet, but I've kind of got the main riff and everything. And then I'll bring it into the band, and I call it the band blender. So they're really talented. Like my band members are like, they're super talented guys. Like I'm a female bass player. They're just excellent musicians. And like, I'll just throw it in and like within 5 minutes, they're like, yeah, got it, easy. And cause it's like, it's pop really. So it's like, it's basically 4 chords and just like arranging it. And so, yeah, we had a bunch of like a couple of songs ready to go. We're about to start recording a new EP, and then COVID hit. And so basically, like, my guitarist he's just had his second baby. Like that's how we know we're getting a bit older, because everyone's starting to have kids. And so he's like, we're like, hey, like we're happy just to have a socially distant rehearsal and get this going. And then, but for him, he's like, I can't really be jumping into a band rehearsal space and then walking back to see my kids, and
right.
Which is completely valid. So basically, it's like, I don't really know. I mean, I've written a bunch of songs in quarantine as well, and I'm really excited about it. I just don't know. I don't know whether to, as I said, everyone's at different levels, right? So I don't know whether to say, hey, why don't we just start recording? Like, how does everyone feel about that? Like, you know, so it's just, I just got to feel it out a bit, but I'm definitely keen, and we've got all the tracks ready to go. So hopefully by the end of, you know, hopefully in the next 3 months, I'd like to have some stuff out, you know?
We want it. The name, the Elevate. Where was that born of? Is that a portmanteau? Is that like the aftertaste of Vegemite? Like, what's in the name?
Yeah, it's like, look, it's just it just means Los Angeles. So you know how people say the US of A? So it just means LA. So the L of A.
Got it.
The L of A. And like, I was starting a blog. I was starting like a blog at the time, like when that was popular, and I was coming up with names because it was all going to be about Australian bands playing in Los Angeles. So I wanted something around that, and then I came up with that name, and then I never did the blog, and then I ended up naming the band that. And look, it's great when you explain it, but I really regret it because like I can't just like, people are like, what's the name? I hate, honestly, like I dread it when people ask me the name of my band, because I basically got to pull out a fucking whiteboard and be like,
yeah,
here's the and then so it's like, and after people hear it and understand it, they get it, and they're like, oh, that's cool, like that's a really good play on words. And you know, but my drummer's in another band, they're just called Highland, and you only have to say that once, and people are like, oh, cool, okay, got it. I'm like, you know,
yeah. Well, it's unique though. It's unique. What I admire about you, Xavier, is that you're so like positively, refreshingly Los Angeles. You know, people, myself included, jaded. Like, you know, like LA is like, ooh, you know, traffic, it's too expensive. But when everything you do, and like the music and how you talk about Los Angeles, you have such an affinity for it. You're so effusive when you talk about LA, and it's very refreshing. Because gone are the days where people celebrate Los Angeles the way you do creatively and in your story. So thank you for that, because for years I was like, you know, LA is a shithole and I'm leaving and I'm done. But with that said, with your career in Los Angeles, if you weren't doing what you were doing and you weren't a musician, you weren't on television, you weren't this incredible host, what would you be doing?
Good question. Well, actually, first to go back to what you were saying, like I'm a massive. Everyone who knows me well, like knows I'm a massive Los Angeles hype boy. Like,
Yeah.
I love it, and I was the same as you, Jason. So I reckon it's funny. Like, I feel like Australians have a bit of a chip on their shoulder about Los Angeles. Like, we're like, oh, like what you hear about it, right? Which is like, all the things that are wrong with the world. So it's like vanity, and just I guess like flashiness and just values that really shouldn't be perpetuated. And so
Sure.
I came over here. I first moved here and I was like, oh, like people are like, oh, so you're in LA? I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to stay here. Like, it's just full of wankers, you know? And then I realized after about a year that actually I was a giant wanker. And it was me. And I realized that actually Los Angeles is full of the most creative and ambitious people you could ever imagine. It's just, you decide, you choose who you surround yourself with, you know? Like, people say,
Yeah.
oh, isn't LA just full of douchebags? I'm like, well, there is a lot of douchebags in every city, maybe a higher concentrate in Los Angeles, but it's like when you're in high school, you didn't hang out with douchebags. You found the people that you vibed with and you like and they inspire you, and you hang out with them. And that's how I feel. That's how I feel about LA. And yeah, I really love just the landscape. I love palm trees. I live in Mar Vista, so just behind Venice. I get out every day. I came from Melbourne, which has got really tumultuous and crazy weather. So after 9 years here, I still try not to forget that. And I come back, I walk outside. I'm looking outside right now. It's perfectly blue skies every day. But the problem is it's beautiful every day. So no, it's not even a point of conversation when it should be.
Right.
And yeah, I really do like it. As I said, it's like it's chewed me up and spat me out a million times. But I try to, I guess, look inwards and not blame it on a city collectively of a couple of million people. You know, it's like generally, if you're having a bad time, it's something you're doing, you know?
Right. Hey, look, accountability. Now, I feel so seen. I feel like you just, thank you for the therapy, Xavier.
Well,
But
what was you actually had a question for it? I forgot it again.
yeah, no problem. Ultimately, beyond what you do now. Yeah. What would be after you hang up the guitar and you put down, you turn off the TV and you put down the microphone, what would you be doing?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. Like I've actually had to think about that a lot. When I thought my company, my whole department was going to get cut, and the hosting stuff was all going to be sort of like not doable, I had to think about that. I was like, wow, like what would I actually be doing? Because I started off in digital marketing, really, in the record label biz, and I had enough of that. You know what I mean? Like I'm almost like scarred from. I used to do it to make money when I was just trying to pay the bills to do what I wanted to be doing. And so that's where my background is. I'm good at it, but I don't enjoy it. So yeah, I actually don't really know. I mean, probably that in hopefully some form of enjoyable capacity. But I guess what I'm saying is that it really enforces that you're on the right track if you can't imagine doing anything else, because I really couldn't.
I know. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think about that. I'm a little bit older than you, and I think about that as well. And it's just like, it's almost like you have to, it's stressful to think it's stressful to think about because you have to really think about it, because you've given so much energy to what you've done, and you've worked so hard to be so great at what you do. And that in itself is a job. And that's years in the making. And the passion that is so intrinsically imbued in you, that's inherently inside of you for what you love and what you do, that just doesn't go you can't give that to just anything. You know, it really sits and stews in your creativity and what you feel you were put on this earth to do. So I understand how weird it is to think about that. But luckily for you, you're only 25. Today's your birthday. What do you have planned? What are you doing? I mean, how does one celebrate their birthday in COVID? My birthday's next month, so I don't know yet. Oh, good for you. Cuervo and vodka. Okay, yeah. We can do that.
Killer. So my office just sent that over to me, so that'll be later. But yeah, heading to the beach later. But heading to San Diego for the weekend. So just like La Jolla area. So
fun.
We were gonna go to Palm Springs, but it's like 117 degrees there.
Yeah,
46 degrees Celsius for the Aussies watching.
Right, don't do that. Melting your tires on the way over there. All right, man. Well, listen, you have the band Elevate, killing the game. Great music, guys. Go to YouTube, check out everything. They're incredible. Then you're on Dream Life, FYI. That airs on what night?
It airs on Sundays on FYI. Sundays at 10 a.m.
Sundays, 10 a.m. FYI, you can see Xavier Brinkman, who just so happens to now be a star, have a starring role on this show every Sunday. And you can also catch him at Herdwell and every place that you are just adding your immense talent to. It's been a pleasure talking to you, man. Again, the happiest of birthdays. And keep on killing them, man. You're doing a good job.
Thank you again. It means a lot coming from you, man. Biggest fan over here. Head cheerleader.
Boom. Go, Xavier. All right, man. I'll let you go. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thanks so much. Cheers.